Rich Rising and Divine Family. May this reach all those who it's meant to reach and align with. Ashe. I'm Ori, your local and multiverse fae. I'm a spirit artist, multifaceted in the visual and performing arts. More primarily, folks know me as a visual artist, but I am doing more, doing a lot more than what meets the eye, to say the least. I felt called in spirit and by ancestors and etc. to speak more on my familial and more specifically my maternal familial lineage, and the house that I grew up in this neighborhood in the west side of St. Louis, and and speak more so on my grandparents' story on my mom's side. My grandmother, well, first off, my grandmother and my grandfather, Carrie Collins Sr. and Leslie M. Collins Jr. were married here in St. Louis in that household, gifted by my great-grandmother, Bedelia James, in 57. My grandma being the eldest of her siblings, my grandfather also being the eldest of his siblings. She was an entrepreneur, a factory worker. He was a factory worker as well as a military, I believe, sergeant, and he definitely, from what I know, served in the Korean War, was honored with a Purple Heart for his services due to him being injured in that war. They married in this historical neighborhood that's honestly been dwindling and eroding away since the tornado occurred. And it's a primarily Black neighborhood that has been infiltrated with gentrification as it is. But yeah, they were married in 57. The house was built in 1908 during the World's Fair era, which was here in 1904, mind you. My grandfather always spoke about how the house was previously owned by Italians, okay? And so it was, like I said, a gift from my granny, my great-grandmother, my grandmother's mother, who thankfully I did meet in my lifetime before she transitioned in 2005, I believe. My grandfather, who transitioned into the ancestral realm in 2011. And so my grandmother is one of my last living grandparents, and I'm not sure for how long, honestly, as she has survived him for almost 15 years this year. And, and his sister is also about the same age. They're about months apart, both 92 years old. And, both of them having recently been hospitalized and such, and being tended to as much as that can be the matter at this time. But I want to speak more on just this being my story and my familial story, and my mother's story. And I feel very called to speak on this, as I and my family do need help, have deeply been needing help for some time now. And I came to a head about this more recently, on speaking on it, on asking, on being on these platforms, and being of service as a creative, as a community liaison, as someone who has also done a lot of work in this community, whether it's seen or unseen or what have you. And I'm grateful to say that this is due to my grandparents and my mother, and honestly, the people that were the pillar, especially matriarchs, who shaped me. Shout out to Mama Deborah and Yari, and also Baba Henry, and having a hand in that predominantly, as well as my grandmother and my mother, in raising me. it's all coming full circle right now. But anyways, my mom was the primary caretaker of my grandparents, and she's the youngest of them, or youngest of her siblings. And basically, I'm needing your help to get some funding for the house, its maintenance, as well as myself right now, who's had to transition out of that space due to its being in construction and restoration period, that my mom has solely really been the caretaker of my grandparents as well as the house. And to make it something more than what it's been. You know, I hadn't really been able to fully see the potential as my mom had up until recently, due to my own mental health overcomings. And I've spoken about that on primarily TikTok and on some platforms, and people who I closely know and associate with. But yeah, this neighborhood that I'm in has been eroding horribly. It's been honestly quite emotionally just heartbreaking, to say the least, to be a witness of it, to see how it's been handled or really mishandled in this neighborhood, north and west side of the city that was affected by the tornado that people mocked and made fun of online, a lot of people. And it's really due to the poverty of this neighborhood that has been and that is still existing. And it's the reason why I felt called to wear this military coat that's my mom's, says her last name, my last name. And yeah, my grandparents. So it all comes circling back to the accountability piece here, because if I'm not going to have it, I'm not sure who will, to be honest. As someone who's been of service and in service because of who I was raised by, my grandmother primarily running that house and doing and leading with having to be an entrepreneur and running the business, bits and pieces, etc., reupholstering furniture for neighbors, friends, people in the neighborhood. And while my grandfather had been in service in the military and then coming back and having been injured and not being able to aid in that space at all as much as he should have, and been able to. Yeah, I grew up in that household, and I'd really like to see it fit that it be tended to well. But as I've been in this transitional periods time and time again, which is primarily why I've had housing insecurities for a good amount of my life. But now I'm stepping into the space of asking and not only being of service, but receiving right now, because that's needed. And as it's Black History Month, it would be deeply appreciated to be seen and heard at this time. But yeah, there's the allocation of funds that's been primarily unacceptable, honestly. And I'm going to move swiftly in this and say that I have creative projects underway that I would really love to see through and see fit, that will not only benefit myself as the artist, but my familial relatives and my mother in that house, as well as my siblings and myself, and also the neighborhood here, with connecting with some people who have farms and stuff like that, and nonprofits in this space. So the link is in my bio if you stood this long in this video to support. So thank you, and please support if you feel called to it. Peace and many blessings.